The Jeffrey Epstein birthday scrapbook of pictures and messages has finally been revealed by a congressional committee, and it is interesting, to say the least. And remember that now infamous, controversial, alleged birthday letter attributed to President Donald Trump? It's apparently in there too. We're going to go through some of the more odd or maybe even creepy messages in this release. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, so we have more to discuss in the Jeffrey Epstein saga. The deceased sex offender, financier, purported sex trafficker who was accused by prosecutors of abusing young girls for years. Well, now there has been a release of more materials from Congress, or a congressional committee to be more specific. And that includes a collection of Jeffrey Epstein birthday notes. Remember, by the way, this is all part of an effort to bring transparency to this case, particularly after the Trump administration and the DOJ have been accused of hiding information. It was only a few months ago that the DOJ and the FBI released a statement basically saying there was no client list, they're not going to be investigating any third parties, there's not more information that really needs to be released. And then what happens? The House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, they stepped in with subpoenas. Actually, I'll tell you what, as we're about to get into this birthday scrapbook, let me start with this announcement from yesterday. It reads, quote, "Today, the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform released records provided by the estate of Jeffrey Epstein pursuant to Chairman James Comer's subpoena issued on August 25th, 2025. Chairman Comer also issued the following statement. It's appalling Democrats on the Oversight Committee are cherry-picking documents and politicizing information received from the Epstein estate today. Oversight Committee Republicans are focused on running a thorough investigation to bring transparency and accountability for survivors of Epstein's heinous crimes and the American people. President Trump is not accused of any wrongdoing, and Democrats are ignoring the new information the committee received today. The committee will pursue additional Epstein bank records based on this new information. Democrats must decide if their priority is justice for the survivors or politics." And then, at the bottom, it says, the committee also obtained information about Epstein's bank accounts. The committee will pursue these bank records. By the way, this is coming at the same time as Representatives Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, who are on different ends of the political spectrum, so you're seeing a bipartisan effort here. They are pushing for a resolution for a vote in the House for a full release of the Epstein files in the DOJ's possession. And we remember last week, survivors of Epstein's purported abuse, they showed up on Capitol Hill. They demanded the release of these files. So we have to talk about what we have here in this release. It's not just the birthday compilation. There is other stuff, but I will tell you, it is things we've pretty much already seen before. Jeffrey Epstein's last will and testament, a contact book of celebrities. But again, that's not really something new. I will say it's always interesting to see Jean-Luc Brunel in that contact book, this French model scout with what appears to say, quote, "Scout for young females." He died, by the way, while awaiting being investigated in France for raping minors. But again, this is an important note. Just being in an address book or a contact list of Jeffrey Epstein doesn't mean anyone is complicit in a crime, knew about what was purportedly going on, or had any role or knowledge whatsoever. Just want to be clear about that. Okay, let's talk about this birthday scrapbook, this birthday compilation, these messages, these cards, these photos for Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday. It was titled The First 50 Years. This is back in 2003. And they are interesting. They are potentially revealing. I mean, you have one message that says, "Birthday greetings to degenerate one." It appears, by the way, that this was all created by Ghislaine Maxwell at the time. Remember, this is Epstein's accomplice who was convicted of federal sex crimes, is serving a 20-year prison sentence for sex trafficking minors to Jeffrey Epstein. Someone who recently spoke to the government, stated some very interesting things as well. And by the way, at the end of this, we have an update regarding Ghislaine Maxwell that we'll talk about as well. Now, you know we've been on top of this Epstein story, I think, since the beginning of Sidebar, maybe. We are going to continue to bring you updates as they develop. And one of the reasons that we can do this and make these episodes is because of the incredible support that we get from our sponsor, Upside. Now, if you don't know what it is, Upside is great. It is a free app that gets you cash back when you buy daily essentials. So I pump my gas, I can use Upside. I go out to lunch, I can use Upside. I get something at a convenience store, I can use Upside. And why wouldn't I want to get cash back when I do all these things, right? This is actual real cash back. It's money that appears in your Upside app that you transfer right into your bank account. So once you have the free Upside app, you claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. You pay as usual using a debit or credit card. You follow the steps on the app, you get paid. So to find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen. But make sure to use our promo code Sidebar because you'll get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Before we even get to the big card, the one that has been attributed to President Donald Trump and has stirred quite a bit of controversy and litigation, there is a lot in here. For example, there is a collection of just all of these photographs of Jeffrey Epstein through the years, including his younger years. There is even his Cub Scout graduation card. Talking Ghislaine for a second, there even appears to be a photo of Epstein swimming in a pool while holding a naked Ghislaine Maxwell. But there are several things in this book that we want to call out. For example, you have this cartoon. So on one side appears to be a depiction of Jeffrey Epstein in 1983 giving balloons to a group of young girls. And then on the other side is what appears to be Epstein getting a massage from multiple women, girls in 2003 with his mansion and plane in the background. And one of the women is clearly near his private region, topless, has a back tattoo with J.E. enclosed in a heart, has the caption, "What a great country," seemingly talking about his progression in life. Yeah, I don't know who that's from, and take that for what you will. It is weird. It is a bit chilling, right? It goes to the question, as we go through this, it goes to the question of, what does that mean? Who knew what and when? Did anybody know what was going on? And again, to be clear, this was a book. This birthday compilation was from 2003. So this was before his prosecution in 2006. The grand jury ended up indicting Epstein in Florida in 2006 on felony solicitation of a prostitute. But the Palm Beach Police Department chief and the lead detective, they referred the case to the feds, the FBI, who brought in the assistant U.S. attorney. In the end, in this controversial sweetheart deal in 2008, Epstein and prosecutors, they worked out a deal where he pled guilty to state charges of solicitation of prostitution and procurement of minors, avoided federal prosecution at the time. That was a very controversial deal. He was ultimately brought up on federal charges in 2019, and he died in his jail cell. But anyway, we go back to this, 2003. Let us talk about the big one. Let us talk about this birthday card that has been attributed to President Donald Trump. So now we are actually seeing it. What is it? It appears to be a silhouette of what appears to be a woman's body, and on the body, it's maybe even just a crude drawing, maybe that's the best way to explain it, and on the body is a written out conversation. It starts out with a voiceover. There must be more to life than having everything. Then it says, Donald says, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Jeffrey responds, nor will I, since I also know what it is. Donald responds, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey responds, yes, we do, come to think of it. Donald responds, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey responds, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. Donald responds, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. And then it says Donald J. Trump and has a signature. Now, obviously, there are people who will say this says a lot, right? The allegation being, did Donald Trump know anything that was going on, participate in anything? And to be clear, there has never been evidence to suggest that in any way, that the president was involved in anything with what Jeffrey Epstein was purportedly up to, okay? This gets released, what happens? White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has come out, posted on X, and said that the drawing, quote, proves this entire birthday card story is false, adding, as I have said all along, it's very clear President Trump did not draw this picture and he did not sign it. She continued, President Trump's legal team will continue to aggressively pursue litigation. And as we know, President Trump sued the Wall Street Journal for $10 billion for defamation when they reported about this apparent birthday note back in July. This is before it came out, before we saw it. The publication of this drawing, though, I will tell you, is interesting, and it's going to be interesting how it's going to affect the legal case. Because back in July, a spokesperson for the Wall Street Journal's parent company, Dow Jones, said, "We have full confidence in the rigor and accuracy of our reporting and will vigorously defend against any lawsuit." But it appears from a legal point of view, right, that this letter exists, this note exists, this drawing exists, and whether or not the Wall Street Journal's reporting was false and defamatory may be a bit more complicated. And, I mean, did they falsely attribute the note to President Trump? Did they act with actual malice, which is what you need when you're talking about defamation of a public figure? Reckless disregard for the truth, knowing it was false? Did they not do the proper homework? Did they just merely report the existence of the drawing, or did they do more? Now, President Trump has said, and denied this all the time, said at the time of the Wall Street Journal publication a few months ago, "These are not my words, not the way I talk." Taylor Budowich, the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, posted on X a compilation of Trump's signatures and seemed to claim that the signature on this drawing doesn't match, writing, "Time for @News Corp to open that checkbook. It's not his signature. Defamation." Now, News Corp owns the Wall Street Journal. It owns the Dow Jones, owns the Wall Street Journal. However, the New York Times has reported that Trump's signature has changed over the years, that he has been known to sign just Donald for more personal notes. And in their reporting, they include an apparent letter in 2001 to Rudy Giuliani that arguably looks very similar to the one in the birthday note, meaning the signatures look very similar or arguably look similar. So, by the way, talking President Trump, there's something else in this birthday compilation. There is another photo. It is a photo of Jeffrey Epstein holding this novelty check that appears to be signed by Donald Trump for $22,500. Also in the photo appears to be Joel Pashkow, a longtime member of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort out in Florida. There's also potentially a caddy in that photo, and there is a woman whose face is blacked out. Below the photo is a handwritten caption that reads, "Jeffrey showing early talents with money plus women, sells fully depreciated, redacted, to Donald Trump for $22,500. Showed early people skills too. Even though I handled the deal, I didn't get any of the money." And then it says either on or the girl. So I didn't get any of the money or the girl. Now, there is also a message from another president, President Bill Clinton. Happy 50th. It's reassuring, isn't it, to have lasted so long across all the years of learning and knowing, adventures, and then it's kind of ineligible, and then you kind of can't make up that other word, adventures, and then you can't make out the next word, and still to have your childlike curiosity, the drive to make a difference, and the solace of friends. Now, we all know that President Clinton his team has even confirmed that he had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, was on his plane, but has all times denied any involvement or knowledge of whatever Epstein was up to. And there's a lot more in this birthday compilation too. What to make of it? I mean, you have a letter that says, quote, "It's no secret that Jeffrey appreciates beautiful women." There's a line that says from someone, "Leaving you with some interesting friends to entertain instead." And there's a photograph that shows a scantily clad woman. There's also a line that says, "Or in one of his glorious homes he likes to share with his friends. Yum, yum." There's another cartoonish drawing that says, "Dear Jeffrey, happy 50th," with a picture of a jet or a plane, 4 women, including a mermaid and 2 in bathing suits. It's signed Joel. There's another of a drawing of Epstein, a jet, and the various locations he apparently frequented or had homes like Paris, Palm Beach, New York, and something titled Little St. Jeff, maybe referring to Epstein's Island, Little St. James. There's another card that says, "Dear Jeffrey, I wanted to get you what you want, so here it is." And then it appears to be a crude drawing of a woman's breasts. This one stood out too. This is a letter from a woman that says, "I received a call from Ghislaine, who I had worked on, massaged, twice in the last few months, to work on her, quote, employer. He is a businessman and wants you to work on his feet at his desk." This is referring to Jeffrey Epstein and how she met him in 1993. It goes on to say, "I remember thinking that you looked like a more handsome Ralph Lauren. We moved over to a sitting area and I sat on a footstool and worked on your feet while you're in an armchair and Ghislaine worked on your shoulders. After a few minutes, you gave me that squinted eye look, a mix of calculation and enjoyment, both devouring and yet submissive. That is so you. The note goes on to say, you asked me to leave with you guys that night to go to Florida. The note goes on to praise him, and there's even a picture of what appears to be potentially her bottom. There's also a section called Girlfriends where they write notes to him. There's lots of pictures of women with redacted faces. And one even says, quote, visiting you down in Palm Beach, can't get a second of privacy with you and a camera around, ha ha. Now, normally that would be kind of, benign, but when you think about the allegation that Epstein had cameras everywhere and was recording everything. Now, under assistance, the assistance section, there was a note where the person says, quote, before Jeffrey, I was a 22-year-old divorcee working as a hostess in a hotel restaurant. After Jeffrey, I now live in New York City. And she explains all the different places that she traveled to, including Florida, St. Thomas, St. John, Paris, Milan, and how she has met Prince Andrew, President Clinton, the Sultan of Brunei, Donald Trump, Naomi Campbell, Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, Chris Tucker. I thought this was interesting too. There was a birthday note that says in part, quote, a few years ago, somebody at a party asked me, does Jeffrey Epstein manage your money? I replied, no, but he advises me on lifestyle. The guy's eyes bugged out of his head, and he said, really? Alas, I am ill-prepared to comment on your lifestyle in any detail, since I am sadly so far behind that it would be talking about things I know little of. And then the letter goes on to say that the best way to describe Epstein was through a series of photographs from this guy's trip to Africa. And in that collection of photographs of animals, that includes photos of 2 lions and 2 zebras being intimate. Yeah, I guess that's the best way to say it, being intimate. Now there's more to see in the scrapbook. There's dozens and dozens of pages. There are warm wishes for Jeffrey Epstein, things like that. But this is what stood out. And again, it raises the question of what do these messages mean? Do they suggest in any way that people knew about what he was accused of doing or not? And was there a difference between knowing a guy or saying a guy partied and was with adult women consensually versus, of course, abusing underage victims? A lot of this is tough to say, but it does give you a lot more insight into Jeffrey Epstein, right? And hey, as I said, before we wrap things up, I have a quick update on Ghislaine Maxwell that I have to talk about. So, one of the last times we talked about Ghislaine Maxwell is we were playing portions of her interview with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. There has been a lot of speculation about whether she worked out a deal to provide useful information to the government, maybe in exchange for a pardon, or maybe commuting her 20-year prison sentence, getting some sort of legal relief. And she said some very notable things in her interview.
So, there's been a lot of conversations about whether Mr. Epstein maintained like a list of people, like a book of famous people that he knew, it's called a black book or a client list or a list. Did you know of the existence of any such list?
There is no list.
What did you observe as far as President Trump and his relationship with you or Mr. Epstein?
Well, I just want to say for my relationship with President Trump, relationship's a big word, but I just want to say that I met him, or I believe I may have, because of my father in the 90s.
Yep. Okay.
So my father liked him very much, and he really liked his wife as well, because they were both Czechoslovakian. And as far as I'm concerned, President Trump was always very cordial and very kind to me, and I just want to say that I admire his extraordinary achievement in becoming the president now, and I like him, and I've always liked him. So that is the sum and substance of my entire relationship with him.
What about Mr. Epstein's relationship with him?
I don't know how they met, and I don't know how they became friends. I certainly saw them together, and I remember the few times I observed them together that they were friendly. I mean,
was
they
that
seemed
in
friendly.
Social settings or was that in private settings?
I believe I only ever saw them in social settings. I don't recall any private settings.
Did you ever observe President Trump receive a massage?
Never.
And did you ever hear Mr. Epstein or anybody say that President Trump had done anything inappropriate with masseuses or with anybody in your world?
Absolutely never. In any context.
The reason I'm talking about this is her attorney, Arthur Aidala, made some news. He just said something very interesting on CNN. Now, to be clear, Arthur's a friend of mine. He's a friend of Law&Crime. But this was important. Maxwell was moved to a arguably cushier, low-security prison at the time she provided this information to Todd Blanche. So the question became, to Arthur Aidala, was she moved as part of a deal? Like, essentially, did she work out a deal with the government? Now, he spoke in general terms, because obviously, as her attorney, there's so much he can't say. But what he did say was, quote, "When anybody who's represented by a lawyer who knows what they're doing goes in and meets with the government, there's always a quid pro quo. You don't just take your client in and say, let me talk to you about something. They wanted information from, hypothetically, anytime the government wants information from a citizen, the citizen says, well, I have a right to remain silent. If you want me to give up that right, I need something in return. Usually the exchange results in a plea bargain." Now, that is when another panelist on this show, former Biden advisor Neera Tanden, says, you just admitted to a quid pro quo with the Trump administration. Aidala responds, but that's how the whole system works. Now today, Arthur Aidala told the Daily Beast that he never said there was a quid pro quo deal for Ghislaine Maxwell. Again, that he was talking in generalities about how our justice system works and how plea bargains work. And referring to Tanden, he said, she's not a lawyer and doesn't know what she's talking about. It should be noted, she did obtain a law degree from Yale Law School. Not sure if she ever took the bar or practiced ever, but just highlighting that point. Now, Aidala also said, and this is important, he didn't speak to Ghislaine Maxwell or her attorney, David O. Marcus, who was her attorney that represented her during that interview, didn't talk to either of them about this interview because that's not his job. He didn't want to know the details. He didn't want to get involved in all that. Arthur Aidala is focusing on her criminal appeal in her criminal case. And Aidala said, sometimes knowledge is power and sometimes ignorance is bliss. And this was apparently confirmed by Mr. Marcus in a statement to the Daily Beast saying Aidala was not involved in the DOJ interview and added, there was absolutely no quid pro quo and any suggestion otherwise is off the wall. That is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on Instagram or X. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll catch you next time.